David pulled his car into the parking lot of Tech World Electronics, a smile crossing his face as he looked at the bright storefront. 3 months ago, he had purchased this store along with 2 others as part of his growing business empire. At 35, David had worked his way up from nothing, starting with a small computer repair shop in his garage and building it into a successful chain of electronics stores. Today was different, though. Instead of his usual business suit, David wore faded jeans, old sneakers, and a simple gray hoodie. His plan was simple: visit his store as a regular customer to see how things really worked when the boss wasn't around. He wanted to understand his customers' experience and see how his employees treated people when they thought no one important was watching. The automatic doors slid open with a soft whoosh, and David stepped inside. The store looked good. Clean floors, well-organized displays, and the latest gadgets showcased under bright lights. A few customers browsed quietly while soft music played in the background. Everything seemed normal, exactly what David hoped to see. But something felt off almost immediately. David noticed the store manager, a tall man with graying hair named Thompson, watching him from behind the customer service counter. Their eyes met for a moment, and David nodded politely, but Thompson didn't return the greeting. Instead, his expression hardened and he began moving slowly in David's direction. David shrugged it off and walked toward the smartphone display. He picked up the latest model, turning it over in his hands to examine the build quality. These phones were big sellers, and he wanted to understand what customers liked about them. As he tested the camera function, he became aware of footsteps behind him. "Can I help you with something?" The voice was sharp, suspicious. David turned to find Thompson standing close, too close, with his arms crossed. "Just looking around, thanks," David replied with a friendly smile. "This is a nice phone. How long has it been out?" Thompson's eyes narrowed. "Are you planning to buy something, or are you just handling the merchandise?" The question caught David off guard. The tone was rude, aggressive even. David had visited dozens of electronics stores over the years, and salespeople were usually eager to help, not hostile. "I'm just browsing right now," he said calmly, "trying to decide what might work best for me." "Uh-huh." Thompson moved even closer. "Well, this is expensive equipment. We don't like people just playing with things they can't afford." David blinked, processing what he'd just heard. The assumption was clear and ugly. Based on nothing more than his casual clothes and appearance, this manager had decided David couldn't afford to shop here. "I'm sorry, what exactly are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you to be careful with the merchandise or move along." Other customers were starting to notice. A woman with her teenage daughter glanced over, and an elderly man stopped pretending to look at tablets. David felt heat rising in his chest, but he kept his voice steady. "I'm a customer browsing your store. I have every right to look at items I'm considering purchasing." Thompson stepped back slightly but kept his aggressive stance. "Look, I've been doing this for 20 years. I know trouble when I see it. Maybe you should try the discount store down the street." The words hit like a slap. David couldn't believe what he was hearing in his own store. He pulled out his wallet, revealing several credit cards and cash. "Does this change your assessment of whether I can afford to shop here?" But Thompson barely glanced at the wallet. "Anyone can get fake cards these days. I'm asking you nicely to leave before this becomes a problem." "A problem for who?" David's voice rose slightly despite his efforts to stay calm. More customers were staring now, and he could see employees whispering to each other near the gaming section. "For you," Thompson said, his hand moving toward the radio clipped to his belt. "I can call security or you can walk out on your own." "Your choice." David looked around the store, his store, at the faces staring at him. Some looked sympathetic, others seemed entertained by the drama. A few appeared to agree with Thompson's treatment. The humiliation washed over him in waves. He thought about revealing who he was right then and there, but something held him back. Maybe it was pride, or maybe he needed to see just how far this would go. "Fine," David said quietly. "I'll leave." "Smart choice," Thompson replied, following David toward the exit to make sure he actually left. "And don't come back unless you're seriously shopping." The walk to the door felt endless. David's footsteps echoed on the polished floor while Thompson stayed close behind, like he was escorting a criminal. Other customers watched the entire scene unfold, some shaking their heads, others pulling out phones to record what was happening. As David reached the exit, he turned back one more time. Thompson stood there with his arms crossed, a satisfied smirk on his face. "Have a nice day," Thompson said with fake politeness. David pushed through the doors and walked quickly to his car, his hands shaking as he fumbled with the keys. He sat in the driver's seat for several minutes trying to process what had just happened. In his own store, he had been profiled, humiliated, and thrown out like a common criminal. The drive home passed in a blur. David's mind raced with anger, disbelief, and something else, determination. He thought about all the other customers who might have faced similar treatment, people who didn't have the power to fight back like he did. How many had been made to feel unwelcome in his store? How many had left humiliated and never returned? By the time David reached his house, his shock had transformed into resolve. Thompson had made a serious mistake, but this wasn't just about one prejudiced manager anymore. This was about something much bigger, about respect, dignity, and ensuring that no other customer would ever be treated the way he had been today. David sat in his driveway, still wearing the same casual clothes that had apparently marked him as unworthy in Thompson's eyes. Tomorrow he would return to that store, but next time things would be very different. Next time Thompson would learn exactly who he had thrown out, and more importantly, he would face the consequences of his actions. The humiliation burned, but it also fueled something powerful inside David. Justice was coming, and it would arrive sooner than Thompson could possibly imagine. David sat in his home office that evening, still unable to shake the feeling of what had happened earlier. The mahogany desk was covered with business documents and quarterly reports, but he couldn't focus on any of it. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Thompson's smug face and heard those cutting words about going to the discount store down the street. His phone buzzed with a text from his business partner. "Lisa, how did the store visit go?" she had written, completely unaware of what had transpired. David stared at the message for a long moment before calling her directly. Lisa had been his partner for 8 years, and they had built their business empire together through trust and shared values. She was one of the few people who would understand not just the business implications of what happened, but the personal hurt as well. "David, how are things?" Lisa's voice was cheerful when she answered. "We have a problem," David said simply, and then told her everything. Lisa listened in stunned silence as David recounted the entire incident. When he finished, there was a long pause before she spoke. "I can't believe this happened in our store." "David, I'm so sorry." "It's not your fault," David replied. "But I need to know if this is happening to other customers. We can't let this slide." "Absolutely not," Lisa agreed immediately. "What do you want to do?" David had been thinking about this for hours. "I want you to visit the store tomorrow. Go in as a regular customer, see how Thompson treats you, but be careful. Don't let on that you know anything." "Done," Lisa said without hesitation. "What time should I go?" "Mid-morning, when it's busy enough that he won't focus entirely on you, but not so busy that you can't observe his behavior with other customers." The next morning, Lisa drove to Tech World Electronics wearing her best professional outfit, a tailored navy suit, designer handbag, and expensive jewelry. She wanted to present exactly the kind of customer Thompson would probably welcome with open arms. As she entered the store, she immediately spotted Thompson near the customer service counter. He was helping an elderly white gentleman select a new tablet, his demeanor friendly and patient. The contrast with how he had treated David was already obvious. Lisa browsed slowly, watching Thompson's interactions with different customers. When a young Latino man asked about gaming headphones, Thompson's response was curt and dismissive. He pointed toward the wall display without getting up from his chair and told the customer to figure it out yourself. But when a well-dressed white woman asked about the same product just minutes later, Thompson personally walked her to the display and spent 10 minutes explaining the features. The pattern was becoming clear, and Lisa felt sick watching it unfold. After about 20 minutes, Thompson noticed Lisa examining the high-end smartphone display. He approached with a completely different energy than David had described, warm, professional, eager to help. "Good morning. I see you're looking at our premium phones. Are you due for an upgrade?" Lisa smiled politely. "Yes, I'm thinking about it. My current phone is getting old." "Well, you've come to the right place. These are the absolute best on the market." Thompson Lawn ched into an enthusiastic sales pitch, highlighting every feature and benefit. His knowledge was impressive, and his customer service was exactly what it should be, for customers he deemed worthy of respect. "You know," Lisa said casually, "I was talking to a friend yesterday who said he had some trouble here recently. Something about being asked to leave." Thompson's expression shifted slightly, a hint of pride creeping in. "Oh, that. Yeah, we had to remove someone yesterday. Guy was acting suspicious, handling expensive merchandise like he owned the place. You know the type." Lisa's stomach turned, but she kept her expression neutral. "Really, what made him suspicious?" "Just the way he was dressed, his whole attitude. These people think they can come in here and waste our time when they clearly can't afford anything. I've been in retail for 20 years. I can spot trouble a mile away." "These people?" Lisa asked carefully. Thompson glanced around and lowered his voice. "Look, I'm not racist or anything, but you have to be realistic. Some customers are just not our target market. We cater to professionals, people with real money to spend. That guy yesterday was clearly not our clientele." Lisa felt her hands clench involuntarily. She forced herself to stay calm and even managed to nod sympathetically. "I understand. You have to protect your business." "Exactly. Thank you for understanding. Not everyone gets it." Thompson seemed pleased to find what he thought was a like-minded customer. "Sometimes you have to make tough decisions to maintain the right atmosphere for your real customers." Lisa continued the conversation for a few more minutes. Gathering more evidence of Thompson's attitudes and practices, she purchased a phone case to maintain her cover, all while Thompson treated her like royalty. When she left, he personally walked her to the door and thanked her for her business. Sitting in her car afterward, Lisa immediately called David. "It's worse than we thought," she began, and told him everything she had witnessed and recorded on her phone. David listened with growing anger and determination. "So it's not an isolated incident. He's systematically treating customers differently, based on how they look and what he thinks they can afford." "It's textbook discrimination," Lisa confirmed. "And David, he was proud of what he did to you. He actually bragged about it." That evening, David reviewed the security footage from the store's cameras. As the owner, he had access to all surveillance systems, and what he saw confirmed his worst fears. Thompson's behavior toward customers of color was consistently dismissive and suspicious, while he rolled out the red carpet for white customers, especially those who looked affluent. David found footage of Thompson following a young black woman around the store for 15 minutes, clearly assuming she was going to steal something. There was video of him ignoring questions from Hispanic customers, while immediately assisting white customers who entered after them. The evidence was overwhelming and heartbreaking. "We have everything we need," David told Lisa during their evening call. "Video evidence, audio recordings, witness discrimination. The question now is how to handle this properly." "What are you thinking?" Lisa asked. David had spent hours considering his options. He could simply fire Thompson quietly and move on. That would solve the immediate problem, but wouldn't address the broader issue or send a message that this behavior was unacceptable. Or he could make this a teaching moment, not just for Thompson but for everyone who witnessed what happened. "I want to go back tomorrow," David said finally. "But this time I want to handle this publicly, properly. Thompson needs to face consequences for his actions, and our other employees need to see that discrimination has no place in our business." "Are you sure? That's a big step." David thought about all the customers who had been mistreated, all the people who had been made to feel unwelcome in his store. "I'm sure. It's time Thompson learned who he really threw out yesterday, and it's time to make sure this never happens again." As he hung up the phone, David felt a sense of purpose settling over him. Tomorrow would bring justice, not just for him but for every customer who deserved to be treated with dignity and respect. Thompson's reckoning was coming, and it would be a lesson he would never forget. David barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the faces of the customers Thompson had mistreated, and he felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. By dawn, he was already at his kitchen table with his laptop, a cup of coffee growing cold beside him as he worked out the details of what needed to happen. This wasn't just about revenge or personal satisfaction. David had built his business on principles of respect and equality, and Thompson's behavior violated everything he stood for. More importantly, David realized he had a responsibility to his employees, his customers, and his community to address this properly. The first call he made was to his lawyer, Robert Chen, a sharp attorney who had helped David navigate various business challenges over the years. "Robert, I need to run something by you," David began, explaining the entire situation from start to finish. Robert listened carefully, asking detailed questions about the evidence Lisa had gathered and the security footage David had reviewed. "You have a strong case for workplace discrimination and hostile work environment," Robert confirmed. "But what exactly are you planning to do?" David outlined his initial thoughts, returning to the store, confronting Thompson publicly, and making it clear that such behavior would not be tolerated. "I want to handle this in a way that sends a message but doesn't put the business at risk." "Smart approach," Robert agreed. "Document everything, keep witnesses present, and make sure you follow proper termination procedures. You have grounds for immediate dismissal based on the evidence you've shown me. Just make sure you do this professionally." With legal backing secured, David's next call was to Jennifer Torres, his regional manager who oversaw the day-to-day operations of his 3 stores. Jennifer was a seasoned professional who had worked in retail management for 15 years, before joining David's company 2 years ago. "Jennifer, I need you to come to my office this morning. We have a serious situation at the downtown store." An hour later, Jennifer sat across from David's desk as he played the audio recording Lisa had made and showed her the security footage. Jennifer's expression grew darker with each piece of evidence. "I can't believe this," she said, shaking her head. "David, I'm so sorry this happened to you, and I'm horrified that it's happening to our customers. This is completely unacceptable. What do you know about Thompson's background? How did he end up as manager?" Jennifer pulled out her tablet and accessed the employee files. "He was hired 6 months ago by the previous owner just before you acquired the store. His resume looked good. 20 years of retail experience, good references from his last job. But clearly we didn't dig deep enough into his management style." David leaned back in his chair. "Here's what I want to do. Tomorrow morning I'm going back to that store, but this time I want you there with me along with Robert. I want Thompson to understand exactly who he mistreated and what the consequences are for discrimination." "Absolutely," Jennifer nodded. "What about the other employees? They need to understand what happened and why we're taking action. That's part of the plan. I want this to be a learning experience for everyone. Our employees need to see that we take discrimination seriously, and they need to understand what proper customer service looks like." David spent the rest of the day refining his approach. He contacted the local news station that had been covering stories about retail discrimination, explaining the situation and inviting them to document how a business owner should respond when faced with prejudice in their establishment. The news director, Patricia Williams, was immediately interested. "This could be a powerful story about accountability and doing the right thing. We've covered too many incidents where discrimination gets swept under the rug. That's exactly why I want you there," David explained. "This isn't about getting publicity for my business. It's about showing that discrimination has consequences and that business owners have a responsibility to address it." That evening, David called Lisa to review the final details of their plan. "Are you ready for this?" she asked. "I have to be," David replied. "Every day we wait is another day Thompson might mistreat someone else. And honestly, I keep thinking about all the customers who don't have the power to fight back like I do. This is for them as much as it is for me." Lisa was quiet for a moment. "You know, what happened to you was terrible, but the way you're handling it, that's going to make a real difference. Not just in our store, but hopefully in how other business owners think about these issues." David had also spent time researching best practices for addressing workplace discrimination. He reached out to diversity training consultants and began planning comprehensive anti-bias training for all his stores. This incident would become a catalyst for positive change throughout his entire business. The next morning dawned clear and crisp. David stood in front of his bedroom mirror adjusting his tie. Today he wore his best charcoal gray suit, the one he saved for the most important business meetings. The contrast with yesterday's casual outfit was intentional. He wanted Thompson to see exactly who he had mistreated. Jennifer arrived at David's office at 8 o'clock sharp, carrying a folder W. with Thompson's employment file and documentation of the discrimination incidents. Robert joined them a few minutes later, briefcase in hand and ready to ensure everything was handled properly from a legal standpoint. "The news crew will meet us at the store," David explained as they walked to the parking garage. "I want them to see how we handle this situation professionally and with dignity. This isn't about humiliating Thompson. It's about accountability and change. As they drove toward Tech World Electronics, David felt a strange calm settling over him. The anger and hurt from yesterday had crystallized into determination. Thompson was about to learn that actions have consequences, and more importantly, every employee and customer in that store was about to see what respect and accountability looked like. "You know," Jennifer said from the passenger seat, "in all my years in retail, I've seen this kind of behavior before. What makes this different is that you're in a position to actually do something about it, and you're choosing to do the right thing." "That's the point," David replied. "Too many people stay silent when they witness discrimination. Too many business owners ignore it, or handle it quietly to avoid controversy, but staying silent makes us complicit." As they pulled into the Tech World parking lot, David could see the news van already waiting. Patricia Williams and her cameraman were setting up their equipment, preparing to document what would hopefully become a positive example of how businesses should respond to discrimination. David took a deep breath as he got out of the car. In a few minutes, Thompson would come face to face with the man he had humiliated and dismissed. But more importantly, every person in that store would witness that discrimination has no place in business, and that respect and dignity are not optional values. The reckoning Thompson had unknowingly set in motion was about to begin, and it would serve as a lesson not just for him, but for everyone who believed that some customers were less worthy of respect than others. David straightened his tie one last time before pushing through the glass doors of Tech World Electronics. The transformation from yesterday was complete. Gone were the casual jeans and hoodie, replaced by an impeccably tailored charcoal suit, crisp white shirt, and Italian leather shoes that clicked authoritatively on the polished floor. Jennifer walked beside him, her own professional attire and confident bearing immediately commanding attention from the store employees. Robert followed close behind, his legal briefcase and serious expression suggesting this was no ordinary visit. The news crew entered last, their camera equipment drawing curious glances from customers throughout the store. Thompson was behind the customer service counter, helping a customer exchange a defective cable. He glanced up briefly at the group entering his store, his eyes passing over David without recognition. The expensive suit and confident demeanor apparently rendered David invisible to Thompson's prejudiced expectations. Jennifer approached the counter with purposeful strides. "Excuse me, are you the store manager?" Thompson looked up, instantly shifting into his professional mode when he saw Jennifer's executive appearance. "Yes, I'm Thompson, the store manager. How can I help you?" "I'm Jennifer Torres, regional manager for Tech World Electronics," she announced clearly, her voice carrying across the store. Several employees stopped what they were doing, and customers began to pay attention to the unfolding scene. Thompson's face went pale. He had never met the regional manager, but he knew the corporate structure well enough to understand this was his boss's boss. "Ms. Torres, I had no idea you were coming. Is everything all right?" "Actually, no. Everything is not all right," Jennifer replied, her tone professional but firm. "I'd like you to meet someone very important." She stepped aside, gesturing toward David. "This is David Mitchell, the owner of Tech World Electronics and your ultimate employer." The words hit Thompson like a physical blow. His mouth opened slightly as his eyes focused on David's face, recognition dawning with horrible clarity. The confident, well-dressed businessman standing before him was unmistakably the same man he had humiliated and ejected from the store just 24 hours earlier. "Mr. Mitchell," Thompson stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't realize." David stepped forward, his expression calm but his eyes intense. "Yesterday you asked me to leave this store. You told me I should try the discount store down the street because I clearly couldn't afford to shop here. Do you remember that conversation, Thompson?" The store had gone completely quiet. Employees gathered at a respectful distance, their faces showing shock and curiosity. Customers stopped their browsing to watch the drama unfold. Even the background music seemed to fade away as everyone focused on the confrontation. Thompson's face cycled through several emotions: confusion, recognition, fear, and then desperate calculation as he tried to find a way out of his predicament. "Sir, I think there might have been a misunderstanding. I was just trying to protect the merchandise." "Protect it from whom?" David asked quietly. "From a customer who was examining a phone he was considering purchasing? From someone who had cash and credit cards in his wallet? Or were you protecting it from someone you decided didn't belong here based solely on how he looked? The news camera captured every moment, every expression, every word. Patricia Williams had positioned her crew to get clear shots of both men while remaining unobtrusive to the unfolding scene. Jennifer stepped forward with a tablet in her hands. "Thompson, I want you to explain something to Mr. Mitchell and our employees. Yesterday, my associate visited this store and had a conversation with you." Let me play that conversation back. The audio recording began playing clearly through the tablet speakers. Thompson's voice filled the store as he described removing David, using phrases like, "you know the type" and "these people" and "not our target market." Several employees gasped audibly, and customers shook their heads in disgust. Thompson's face went from pale to red. "That was taken out of context. I didn't mean—" "What exactly did you mean?" David interrupted, his voice still calm but carrying unmistakable authority. "Because we also have security footage of your interactions with customers over the past several weeks." Robert stepped forward and handed Thompson a tablet displaying the security footage. "This shows you following customers around the store based on their appearance. Here's footage of you ignoring questions from some customers while immediately assisting others. The pattern is quite clear." As Thompson watched the footage, his shoulders sagged. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Around the store, employees were watching with a mixture of shock and embarrassment. Some had suspected Thompson's bias but hadn't known how to address it. Others were genuinely surprised by the extent of the discrimination. "Thompson," David said, drawing the manager's attention back to him. "Yesterday you made assumptions about me based on nothing more than my clothing and appearance. You decided I didn't deserve basic respect or customer service. You humiliated me in front of other customers and forced me to leave my own store." David's voice remained steady, but there was steel underneath. "What you did wasn't just wrong, it was illegal. But more than that, it violated every principle this business is built on. Respect, dignity, and equal treatment for all customers aren't just nice ideas. They're the foundation of how we operate." Thompson attempted one more defense. "Sir, I've been in retail for 20 years. I was just trying to prevent theft. By following customers around. By treating people differently based on how they look," Jennifer interjected. "Thompson, we have footage of you treating customers completely differently based on their race and appearance. This isn't about preventing theft, this is about prejudice." David addressed the growing crowd of employees and customers. "I want everyone here to understand something important. What happened yesterday was wrong, and it's not tolerated in this business or anywhere else. Every customer who walks through those doors deserves to be treated with respect, regardless of how they look, how they're dressed, or any assumptions we might make about them." He turned back to Thompson. "Your employment with Tech World Electronics is terminated immediately, effective now. Your actions violated company policy, basic human decency, and the law. Security will escort you from the premises." Thompson started to protest, but Robert stepped forward with official termination papers. "Mr. Thompson, you're being dismissed for cause due to discriminatory behavior toward customers. You have 10 minutes to collect your personal belongings before security escorts you out." As Thompson slowly walked toward the back office to gather his things, David addressed the remaining staff. "I want to be crystal clear about our values. Every customer is welcome here. Every person who enters this store deserves the same level of respect and service. If anyone has a problem with that, now would be a good time to speak up." The employees looked at each other, but no one spoke. Several nodded in agreement, and a few looked relieved that the discrimination they had witnessed was finally being addressed. "Good," David continued. "We'll be implementing comprehensive training for all staff on customer service and anti-discrimination policies. This incident is going to become a learning opportunity for our entire company." When Thompson returned with his box of personal items, his face was a mask of humiliation and defeat. Security officers flanked him as he walked toward the exit, the same doors through which he had escorted David less than 24 hours earlier. As Thompson reached the threshold, David called out one final time. "Thompson, I hope you learned something from this experience. Respect isn't optional, and everyone deserves dignity regardless of how they look or what you assume about them." The doors closed behind Thompson with a soft whoosh, the same sound that had marked David's humiliating exit the day before. But this time, it was justice walking out, not prejudice triumphing. The silence that followed Thompson's departure was heavy with emotion. Customers and employees alike seemed to be processing what they had just witnessed, a powerful lesson in accountability and the consequences of discrimination. David stood quietly for a moment, allowing the gravity of the situation to settle before addressing everyone in the store. "I know what just happened was difficult to watch," David began, his voice carrying clearly through the store. "But it was necessary. Everyone in this room just saw what happens when respect and dignity are forgotten. More importantly, you've seen what accountability looks like." A young employee named Kevin, who had worked at the store for 6 months, raised his hand tentatively. "Mr. Mitchell, I want to apologize. Some of us noticed that Thompson treated customers differently, but we didn't know how to speak up." David nodded understandingly. "Kevin, that's exactly why we're going to make changes. No employee should feel afraid to report discrimination or inappropriate behavior. We're going to establish clear policies and safe channels for reporting problems." Jennifer stepped forward with her tablet. "I'm promoting Rachel Martinez to store manager, effective immediately." Rachel, the assistant manager who had worked at the store for 3 years, looked shocked but grateful. She had consistently treated all customers with respect and had been uncomfortable with Thompson's behavior but felt powerless to challenge it. "Rachel has shown integrity and professionalism throughout her time here," David explained. "She understands that excellent customer service means treating everyone equally, regardless of their appearance or what we might assume about them." The news crew captured Rachel's emotional reaction as she accepted the promotion. Patricia Williams approached David for a brief interview, asking him about his decision to handle the situation publicly rather than quietly firing Thompson. "Discrimination thrives in silence," David explained to the camera. "When business owners ignore prejudice or handle it quietly, it sends the message that it's acceptable as long as you don't get caught. I wanted everyone to see that there are real consequences for treating people with disrespect." Over the next hour, David and Jennifer worked with the staff to establish new protocols. They discussed how to recognize unconscious bias, how to treat all customers equally, and how to report concerns without fear of retaliation. The atmosphere in the store gradually shifted from tense to hopeful, as employees began to understand the positive changes coming. Several customers approached David to thank him for taking action. An elderly black gentleman who had witnessed Thompson's discriminatory behavior in the past expressed his gratitude. "I stopped shopping here because of how that man treated people like me," he said. "Knowing the owner cares about treating everyone fairly makes me want to give this store another chance." A young Latina mother with her 2 children also spoke up. "My kids saw what happened here today. They learned that standing up for what's right matters, even when it's difficult. Thank you for showing them that." The news story aired that evening on the local station and quickly gained attention on social media. The footage of David calmly but firmly addressing discrimination while maintaining his dignity and professionalism resonated with viewers across the community. Comments poured in praising his leadership and calling for other business owners to follow his example. Within days, the story had spread beyond the local area. National news outlets picked it up as an example of how business leaders should respond to discrimination. Business schools began using it as a case study in ethical leadership and corporate responsibility. The impact on Tech World Electronics was immediate and positive. Customer traffic increased significantly as word spread about David's commitment to equal treatment. People who had never shopped there before made special trips to support a business that clearly valued respect and dignity. More importantly, the culture within the store transformed completely. Employees began going out of their way to ensure every customer felt welcome and valued. Rachel implemented team meetings focused on customer service excellence, and staff members started sharing stories of positive interactions with diverse customers. David didn't stop with just this one incident. He used it as a catalyst for company-wide change. He brought in diversity and inclusion consultants to conduct training at all 3 of his stores. He established anonymous reporting systems for employees to raise concerns about discrimination or bias. He also created customer feedback programs specifically designed to identify and address any instances of unequal treatment. 3 months later, David returned to the store for a follow-up visit. This time he wore casual clothes again, not to test anyone, but simply because he felt comfortable being himself in his own business. The difference was remarkable. Every employee greeted him warmly, and he watched as they provided excellent service to customers of all backgrounds. Rachel had proven to be an outstanding manager, leading by example and creating an environment where everyone felt valued. Customer satisfaction scores had reached all-time highs, and the store was consistently exceeding sales targets. "You know what I'm most proud of?" David told Rachel during his visit. "It's not the sales numbers or the positive publicity. It's watching your team treat every single customer like they matter. That's what success looks like." The story of Thompson's firing and David's response continued to ripple through the business community. Other retailers began examining their own practices and implementing similar training programs. Some business owners reached out to David directly, asking for advice on how to address discrimination in their own companies. David started speaking at business conferences about the importance of creating inclusive environments. He shared the hard-learned lesson that staying silent about discrimination makes business owners complicit, while taking action, even when it's difficult, can transform not just individual companies but entire communities. A year later, Tech World Electronics had become known throughout the city as a business that truly valued all customers. The store had won several awards for customer service and community engagement. More importantly to David, he regularly received letters from customers thanking him for creating a place where they felt welcomed and respected. Thompson, meanwhile, had struggled to find another management position after word of his discriminatory behavior spread through the retail community. David felt no satisfaction in Thompson's difficulties, but he hoped the experience would lead to genuine reflection and change. The incident that began with humiliation and injustice had transformed into something powerful and positive. David had turned a moment of personal pain into a catalyst for broader change, proving that when people in positions of power choose to do the right thing, the impact can extend far beyond their own businesses. As David reflected on the experience, he realized that being thrown out of his own store was perhaps one of the most important things that had ever happened to his business. It forced him to confront uncomfortable truths about discrimination and gave him the opportunity to take a stand for values that truly mattered. Justice had been served. But more than that, lasting change had been created, and in a world where discrimination too often goes unchallenged, that change would continue to make a difference for countless customers and employees for years to come.